What's wrong with God? I'm listening here to a preacher, and he's preaching some stuff that I've heard many preachers preach for a while now, even before I left the Christian church. But I didn't notice that they were preaching it when I was a very small boy and was going to Sunday school and then as a teenager in the Christian church. And so what you have to understand is it seems like about every 10 years or so, the preaching changes. So the preaching, the teaching from the Bible changes every now and then. That's telling me that this is something more that man is doing and not quote unquote God. And notice these days I'm actually thinking more of the Creator as being separate from God, although sometimes the two are shown as being interchangeable in our world. But I'm trying to make a difference between the two more and more these days. But I noticed that when I was younger, they would preach all the time and tell you God can fix it and a couple of people just need to come together and fast and pray. And the bigger the problem was, the more fasting there would be and the longer fasting. And, just a lot of help like that from different people praying would fix the problem. And it's just a miracle that you need a breakthrough and all-night prayer meetings and so on. And I find the same kind of teaching, though flavored a little different, in the Hebrew Israelite movement, where while it's not focused on as much because they more teach about the law and learning the commandments and so on, but there's still that teaching there sometimes that if you're just seeking the Most High, then He's going to change your life and He's going to give you that miracle and so on. But it might more come across as if you are keeping the commandments, then your life will change, you get better and so on. And yeah, sure, some people say that happens sometimes, but there are still a lot of times when it doesn't happen. But focusing more on the Christian part of it though, because that's where I heard most of it, I realized that the teaching started to change. When I noted it anyway, it started to change in about the mid-1990s. Because when I was a boy in the 70s and 80s, then I wouldn't have been paying attention to this stuff, but looking back, I can just remember that it wasn't really happening. And some very, very old preaching that I've listened to from even before I was born didn't actually sound like this. They sounded like God's going to just do it and you just need prayer and so on. But then after a while, it started to change to putting the responsibility for miracles and change on you, the listener, on you, the fasting and praying person, on you, the tithe giving, offering giving person. So that now I can understand that there seems to be, I'm trying to find a different word because I've just used this word so much lately, but I'm not going to apologize for it, the word deception, because that's just a time I'm in right now where I'm noting that a lot of things are deception where the Bible is concerned. And so it just has to be said. If Bible teaching people and Torah teaching people have for many, many years used the word law and commandments and grace and pray and fasting and so on, and just believe and claim it, name it and claim it, they never felt the need to stop until they were ready to stop. So deception, fake, trick, I'll stop when I feel to stop using those words. And I'm just getting started with it all. But now that the preaching has changed, because they realize now that a lot of the stuff that they're doing, as the economy gets worse and governments are shuffling things around and passing new laws and so on and doing whatever to go to war and whatever else they're doing, it becomes harder and harder for the Bible-believing, praying person to get some of the miracles that they've always been taught that they should get. And so they can't name it and claim it as easily anymore. And you can't just get well as easily anymore, especially as new strains of, viruses are manufactured, as many claim. It takes longer and longer to get well from certain little stuff, and sometimes you're getting sick more for some people. Excuse me. So now they're like, it's you. And now a lot of preaching and teaching is shifting over to being counseling type of preaching and teaching, so that now we can't fix you by regular teaching anymore and by a quick prayer and laying of hands on you at a crusade meeting, and you go home and you wake up in the morning and it's all right. So now we have to counsel you. So psychology is now being used, which means people are being trained and taught. They're doing courses, right, in psychology, and they're coming and sharing those things over the microphone, and that becomes a preaching. So preaching has become kind of different now. It's a different focus. It's no longer the spiritual kind of preaching, Holy Ghost fire kind of preaching, or the Spirit. It's a counseling thing. But because a lot of Bible verses and concepts are still being used, people don't always understand it. And so there's just a wave now of this newer kind of preaching for the past few years, right? Like the past 10 or 20 years, and it's increased over the last 10, 12 years since I started to pay attention to it. And so the responsibility is put on you, and you must come and do another counseling session at the church with whatever church counselor there is, whoever's doing counseling at the church, and it's just changed. So the responsibility is now on you. It's not about what's wrong with God now that you should be asking, while the responsibility is on you. That's the way they want to look at it. It's more what's wrong with you. You aren't changing enough. You aren't letting go enough of the past. You aren't letting go of the other person. You have them up too much in your heart. Just release it, brother. Just release it, sister. Oh, the child has been through too much. When they used to just take your child up at the altar and pray them through and pray you through, and you move on. You see, it was a belief at the time. But now, the dynamic and cultural attack, spiritually cultural kind of attack, on the spiritual part of the religious ideas taught from the Bible, that kind of stuff has been under attack. And so now we are bombarded with a lot of different ideas out there as to how man should live, as to how we should think, how we should operate in society, what's politically correct and not politically correct, and what is acceptable and not acceptable, or acceptable in certain environments but not in others, and so on. And so what you find then is that you got gay rights and naked rights, whatever the term is for naked rights, I don't know, but basically where you can just go out naked in public. Some countries are paying attention to that more, and you can go topless and nude beaches, and the rights of all kinds of different stuff, and then with the usage of cell phones heavily in church services, whereas when you were a child you didn't have that, and if you managed to have a cell phone in the early days, it was a very big cell phone looking like something that people would take to wars, these war walkie-talkies and war radios that looks big, bulky, with lots of padding and on it, so if it falls it still works, and so on. But now you can just slip your cell phone in your pocket easily, and so you got people not paying attention to the pastors, and they're on their cell phone playing games, or they're on Facebook and all that on their cell phone. And so the whole religious scene is changing fast. And then you get now Hebrew Israelite teaching coming up, and it's damaging the Christian scene, and pastors and churches are hurting over that, and they're complaining, but they're going to complain more in later years, although I'm really coming away from that, because that's just all a deception as well too. But they're coming away from it, but the whole scene is just changing. The whole scene is just changing, is what I should say. And so the responsibility is that if you aren't doing it, it's not going to happen. So we have to counsel you, come to the counseling session and you give a donation if you've got it or whatever. And you got to read this other Christian counseling book or Bible-based counseling book and so on. When all those things weren't needed at first when you were a child. Why? Because the miracles that God used to supposedly give in the church aren't there anymore. The miracles, and I'm going to talk more about this to explain this some more later on, but no rush for that. But the miracles have disappeared. And you who are just coming out of the Christian church, or if you're in the Christian church listening to this, you know, if you don't work extra hard and take some extra hours at work and so on, or, another job, like a part-time job to add to what you're doing already, or try to find another job, you're not going to get the same kind of miracles that used to be there in the old days when people would testify about that stuff, and when your parents would testify, and I got the breakthrough, and I got the house for this and whatever, and I got the cheaper house and whatever, and the breakthrough they got, or they were going to get me out of I was going to get kicked out of my house, but the Lord came with a breakthrough and so on. Now those breakthroughs are getting harder and harder. They're getting harder and harder. Governments are clamping down on all kinds of monies that you get for supporting your child or welfare and whatever. So the miracles are disappearing, which means the miracles were being given by who? By the government. Now, thank God for it, of course. You're glad for it. But it just goes to show that the miracles were not being provided by God when you prayed. Because how can a government make a change and stop God's blessing? God is pushing his hands out and handing you a check for $500. That used to bring your parents through and your grandparents through and so on. And when the government goes through hard times because of whatever's going on in the world scene and oil prices and wars and economies are just collapsing or being rearranged and we're going through changes because of all kinds of stuff that's going on in the earth and the shifting of people all over the earth and things are changing. So government is tightening up and they're cutting up. That $500 check you used to get is now becoming $300. $200. And so when you still can't meet certain deadlines from the things you used to rely on, it takes somebody else to tell you it wasn't God doing it, it was the government that you were relying on and not God. Or it was your job. But when your boss has to cut back because of whatever and they can't afford now to pay you more and you can't get the coverage, like the benefits package is taking longer to be to kick in effect because you got to work longer at a place now before they let your benefits kick in. Some don't even offer benefits anymore and so on. Or you got to be full-time to get it. When you had more of those benefits or your parents had it when you were younger, God blessed you because you got more, you stayed in more health because something happened, you run to the doctor and the pills covered by this and you take the pills and he verifies you get well. You praise the Lord that you are healed. Because God was doing it. But now that the benefits aren't applied to you as much and you leave the job to go get a better job and you leave that first job quicker than you expected, so the benefits didn't kick in yet, and then you get sick before the benefits kick in at the other one that you have to work a year for before the benefits take effect, all of a sudden your health is going on more because of whatever is causing you to get sick and working overtime so your body can't properly take care of itself. You're getting sick. And so God now isn't healing you or keeping your body very well. Why? Because it's just the natural processes of life. You see, this is a trick in the Bible. Religion is just a trick. Praying to God and giving all these miracles is a trick. And I'm addressing the whole God creator stuff in other videos, so I can't say everything right here because you're going to have certain questions. Like, so you're saying there's no God? I'm addressing that over a number of videos. So if you're following me, I'm glad, and you're just going to have to listen to my different videos to get to see where I'm going. Well, basically, it's starting to come home to me that the creator is different from God, but the Bible made God sound like he was the creator. The creator just put certain basic things in life, and when you access those things or live in a certain way on the earth that is quote unquote proper and sensible and wise and so on, from learning things in life and so on, then you get a better life. But along with that, evil people can come and interfere with your life, or war can break out or different stuff and cause you to not benefit. It's like if you got some indigenous people living on a land and they're eating fruit trees and it's all nice and they're healthy all the time, and then someone comes and overpowers them and chops down the trees and then starts to offer them some fake food to eat, or they're forced to move to a place where they can't eat proper anymore and they got to eat other different kinds of stuff that they're not used to, or they're forced to start to eat quote-unquote civilized food in cans and in plastic wrappers and so on, then what happens? It's not God that's necessarily cursing them. It's man that's cursing them, because the men came, new men, and cut down the trees that they were eating from. You see that? This is a people thing. Where is the God? If God is still there in heaven, the Christian God from the Bible, the Abrahamic God from the Torah, then if a man cuts down your tree, why isn't God finding another way to feed you properly so you don't get sick? You see what I'm saying? God can be blocked, meaning the God of the Abrahamic religions can be blocked by what a man does who feels he wants your tree for lumber. And so you can't get that same fruit anymore because he wants your tree, your fruit tree. Or he wants your palm tree. He wants to take the stuff off it to go and make sugar and to make whatever else they make from it, butter and whatever else. And so you don't have it in good supply anymore. So how can God, if he's there, Yahweh, Jehovah, be there, and you still suffer because a mortal man comes and decides he wants his economy to grow and he's just going to take your tree? That means God can't bless you if a man decides to move. But in the old days, it was when God gets ready, you've got to move. But now we find, because remember that song in the church where we used to grow up in Jamaica? When God gets ready, you got to move. 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 When God gets ready, you got to move. I don't remember it fully, but something like that. But now it has turned around to being when man gets ready, you gotta move. I watched a documentary on Netflix probably 3 months ago, and they want to drive the people out of a certain place. People who haven't done them anything or anybody else and have lived there for probably thousands of years, they said. This particular group of people, I don't know if they're from India or they're moving into India, but obviously they have government permission to drive the people out, and they're giving the people a new place to live. They're like, but our parents and great parents have lived here for however long. They're like, well, you need to move. And they put the people to live in a place where they can't thrive. Now they're dying, and now they've got to get man-made food or processed food because they don't have enough trees and so on and natural stuff to eat anymore. And they put them in a place that's not as forest-like and so on. It's a lot of stony ground and so on. So now the people they're getting sick and they're dying. And now they said, you need electricity. We'll give you electricity if you go at the place so you can cook your food and so on. When the people were fine eating the fruit and off the land and so on. So what you find now is that they have to now, to maintain this electricity, they're going to get it for free eventually, immediately. But they're going to find that in order to continue to sustain that electricity, they're going to have to get up and get 9 to 5 jobs the way we work them in call centers and so on. And what does that do? Then they just become like the rest of us. They're no longer living in a natural way with the earth. They just have a job as a zombie. They're not connecting with the earth in the same way because it's stress of life. And they're going to have to work in a different way now to get a regular paycheck to pay for the hydro that is being forced upon them. You see that? When before that they didn't need hydro. They just lived off the light of the sun in the day and the moon at the night, and they picked their fruit outside and washed their clothes by the river and so on, and they were fine and healthy. Now all that is changed. So when man gets on the move, God is powerless. Even the God Yahweh is powerless. The monkey God is powerless. Thor is powerless. The mountain God, the sky God, every kind of God you can think of is powerless when man gets on the move. And when man gets on the move, whether that man is white or black, whether it's a black government or a white government, no matter who you are, Chinese government, any kind of government, Russian government, any kind of government on earth, if any government decides to go and interfere with the people's lifestyles, God cannot save that people. That's why you hear. So that's showing it's not a black or white thing. All we now need to know, from that, is that the reality is that we have been given life, and we've got to start waking up and seeing it for what it really is. that we are all responsible for making the earth well and for living properly on it and enjoying it and so on and sharing with other people and so on. And when that has all been thrown off course, there is no God in your mind or up in heaven, supposedly so, that can help you. What's wrong with God is the question you ask. I want to ask the same question they're asking, what's wrong with you? Because they're saying, what's wrong with you? It's not God, it's because you don't have enough faith, you don't have enough this, you're not letting go of the past enough and so on, that's why you can't move on. But I'm asking it in a different kind of way, to say what's wrong with you. But adding on to that yeah, you should really think what's wrong with you, while you cannot look and see the world for what it really is, that somebody has tricked us all and cultured us worldwide, pretty much, in a way where we think that we must believe in this God that we cannot see, to make us put our faith and trust in him and not see that somebody is ruling over us wherever you are on the earth. If you are being affected like this, somebody is ruling over you that is not allowing you to thrive, to survive, and has replaced your common sense and your sight to see these things with a God from a religion that they have given to you. What's wrong with God? Think about it.